Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas. Bluegrass Jam Along is also brought to you by Token Picks, individually machined guitar and mandolin picks to bring out the best in you and your instrument. Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to Bluegrass Jam Along. This is your Bluegrass Briefing for June 2026. And just to recap on podcast stuff, if you've not checked in for a few weeks, you've missed some really cool interviews in the last few weeks. Since the last briefing, I've had a chat with Sierra Hull about her Fresh Grass Concerto, which has now come out as The Movements, which is brilliant, really fascinating conversation. I love an instrumental piece, as you all know, and that was a really cool chat about Sierra with that one. Really interesting conversation with Tim O'Brien about the Tim O'Brien songbook, which has just come out. I talk about Tim's career, his progress from sort of being a singer to being more of a songwriter, some of his favourite songs, how he approaches songwriting, his thoughts on the whole process. Just really fascinating insight into one of my favourite songwriters, and I know a lot of yours as well. So that was fun. Check that out if you didn't see that. Fun chat with John Reichman about not only his most recent album, The Salish Sea, but also his time with the Tony Rice unit in the 80s, and sort of a part of Tony's career he feels is sort of a little bit less documented than others, and really cool to chat to him about that and his time with Tony and what he learned from that. That was really fun. And what else? Had a wonderful conversation with Bela Fleck and Renee Fleming about their record, The Fiddle and the Drum, which has just come out. I'm a big opera fan and a big bluegrass fan, so to get to talk to the two of them together was a bit of a treat for me. But it's a really interesting record. I like it a lot, and that was a really interesting conversation to get to have. Really enjoyed that one. Coming up next week on the podcast, I've got a chat with Missy Raines, who's been on before as a guest, but I invited her back to pick a record to talk about. I always enjoy the kind of the episodes that focus on somebody's favourite music, and she chose Seldom Seen Act 2, which is a really interesting conversation about that band, about kind of their influence on her, where they sit in her sort of overall story, and also kind of how they sit in the wider bluegrass string band context. Really interesting. I learned a lot and just had a great time chatting to Missy. Always interesting to talk to Missy. But yeah, that is basically what's been going on the podcast. All the usual stuff. If you've missed an episode, if you want to see what's going on, go to bluegrassjamalong.com. There's a list on there along with all the backing tracks you can jam along with, and chord charts and links to social channels and all of that stuff. So yeah, bluegrassjamalong.com, or just go and have a look wherever you get your podcasts and just scroll through the episodes. We're on to something like 525 now, so there's quite a bit on there. But let's crack on and have a chat about what's going on right now with the news and announcements, which is Church Street News. And the first bit is Boone Creek, the Boone Creek album from the 70s that Craft Recordings have reissued and re-released. On vinyl as a download, but they found some extra tracks that have kind of not seen the light of day for a long time. So that record is coming back out, not only remastered, but also updated with some new material. And that's fascinating. It's a really interesting kind of point in not only how bluegrass sort of develops in the 70s, but also in the career of Ricky Skaggs and Jerry Douglas, and just that whole fascinating point around what's going on in the 70s. So that is on its way back out. I will stick a link to Craft Recordings where you can go and pre-order that and check that out. But also I'm going to have some content coming up about that, and not only about kind of that Boone Creek record, but also about the sort of mission that Craft are on to re-release some particular bluegrass records that have, not been available for a while. And that includes the remaster of Church Street Blues, the Tony Rice album they've just put out, all sorts of fascinating stuff they've been doing. So I'm just sort of working on that at the moment. So stay tuned to find out more about that. I'll let you know a bit more. But I'll put a link in where you can go and check out the re-released, remastered version of Boone Creek. Something else which is on the way next month is a new album by Brittany and Natalie Haas. They put one out a couple of years ago called Haas, and I interviewed them both about that. A fascinating conversation and a really cool instrumental record, just violin and cello duet. Such a beautiful sound. They've got a new record coming out next month. A bit more news on that in The Grass is New. Coming up very soon, actually, the 51st Annual Father's Day Bluegrass Festival, which is in Nevada County Fairgrounds in Grass Valley, California. That is June the 18th to 21st. We've got the Bluegrass Cardinals, Sam Grissman Project, Power Rambling Boys, Bronwyn Keith Hines, Missy Raines, Bruce Molsky and Darryl Anger. Loads of cool stuff on there. So that's coming up very soon. So I'll put a link in the show notes to where you can go and find out info and get your tickets for that. Also, Marcel Ardans from the Lessons with Marcel YouTube channel is doing a really interesting project called Winfield. It's a feature-length documentary directed by Marcel and the Emmy Award-winning filmmaker Robert Gourley. And it follows three guitarists in the months leading up to the 2026 National Flat-Pick Guitar Championship in Winfield, Kansas. And it's a really interesting bit of the string band and bluegrass story. The whole kind of fiddle contest thread that has expanded out through all of these things. It's a really old tradition, and sort of contest playing and fiddling is a fascinating branch of kind of bluegrass picking, and I think that'd be a really interesting project. Marcel is, constantly putting out interesting projects and kind of just sort of following threads of the music and finding really interesting things to talk about. So I think this would be a really cool project. I'm going to put a link in the show notes because you can go and help fund this. It's in production now. And if you want to find out more about it, if you want to help support the project, you can do. So I'll stick a link in the show notes. But yeah, Winfield sounds really cool. I think it's coming out next year. So I'll no doubt give you more info on that closer to the time. Another festival, the Fly-In Festival, July 23rd to 25th at the Robert Newland Airport in Huntington, West Virginia. They've got Bing Brothers and Jake Crack with Jason Carter, Appalachian Roadshow, Kenny and Amanda Smith. Lots of cool music, but also the stage is right in front of the runway, and as part of the weekend they have skydiving demonstrations, flyovers, and kind of all sorts of airplane related stuff as well. So if you're into bluegrass, string bands and aeroplanes, that's the one for you. It's the Fly-In Festival in July in Huntington, West Virginia. Again, I'll stick a link in the show notes, go and have a look at that. And the Often Heard band from over here in the UK, they were the last year's international band grant at IBMA. And they came over and played, and they had a bit of hassle because they couldn't get the visa situation sorted. It was a sort of an issue with that, and not all the members made it out. But as often happens with the International Band Grant Band, they get to go back and do a tour, and they are going to be on tour around the US in June and July, including playing at the Opry, at the Station Inn, Grey Fox Bluegrass Festival. So yeah, go and check them out. They're a great band, really, really good band, they Often Heard. If you get a chance to go and see them, please do. I'll stick a link in the show notes where you can see their tour dates. And then just one more thing to add to this. Gabe Witcher, former fiddle player with Punch Brothers, has developed and released an app called Gig Ledger Pro, which is for working musicians, which is a way to help working musicians stay on top of their finances. Sounds like a really fascinating, really useful thing. So this is a slightly unusual thing for the briefing, but I had a chat with Gabe about it, and I will add that to this episode at the end. Obviously just fun to get to chat to Gabe at any point, but it's a really interesting thing, and I know a lot of musicians listen to this podcast, and I thought it might be a really interesting thing for people to hear about. So at the end, I will put in a quick 5-minute interview with me chatting to Gabe about that. So that was really cool. Really enjoyed talking to Gabe about his new product. But yeah, that's all the news. The Boone Creek reissue. There is the new album coming from Brittany and Natalie Haas, 51st Annual Father's Day Bluegrass Festival, Marcel's Winfield documentary, the Fly-In Festival, and Often Heard. Links in the show notes for all of that stuff if you want to go and check it out. But let's move on to the new releases. And this section is called The Grass is New, where we talk about new releases. And the first bit is the one I just mentioned earlier on. Renee Fleming and Baylor Fleck have a record called The Fiddle and the Drum. Kind of collaboration Also includes Jerry Douglas, Aoife O'Donovan, Sarah Jarose, Sierra Hull, loads of people from the string band world, and it sort of celebrates Renee's love of folk music and a long-standing interest she's had in that, and really cool project. Sort of feels almost like a song cycle in a way. It's got a real album quality to it, really sort of interesting arrangements, really interesting choice of material from sort of very old traditional tunes through to more recent things. Have a listen and go and check out the interview I did with Renee and Bella as well if you want to find out more about that. But that's a really cool record that's been on heavy rotation in my house. Also, there's a new EP from Chris Eaton, who's a UK-based dobro player. It's called Resophonic Tonic. 6 tracks of Chris featuring his dobro playing. Really cool. Go and have a listen to that. Brendan Forrest has a new track out called Amabel Lee, which features Michael Cleveland and Dominic Leslie. That's very cool as well. And there's a new single from Brittany and Natalie Haas called Groundhog Hotel. They've got a new record coming out in July. Their last solo record, just called Haas, which is all cello and fiddle duets, was really, really cool. Really good album. And I had a fantastic chat with them about that at the time as well. So yeah, really looking forward to hearing their new record as well. But there's a single, Groundhog Hotel, out now. So go and check all of those out. There's Renee Fleming and Baylor Flex, the fiddle and the drum. Chris Eaton's Resophonic Tonic, Brendan Forrest's Amabel Lee, and Brittany and Natalie Hass's Groundhog Hotel. Lots of good stuff. Moving on to Scroll On Buddy. And Scroll On Buddy is just something that I've spotted on social media somewhere and thought you might enjoy. And this one is a clip of Punch Brothers playing the Imperial March from Star Wars. And it is exactly what that sounds like. Rather than me explain it, I'll stick a link in the show notes and you can go and watch it and see. But it's part of this new tour they've got for the record that's coming out in July. And there seems to be a theme of exploration and adventure about this tour, and that would certainly fit in with that. But yeah, really, it's just a great bit of music, and it's really fun to hear them play it. Enough said about that. Go and watch it. It's fun. And then finally, the In My Ears this week bit is more in my eyes. I've been rereading Neil Rosenberg's book, Bluegrass. And it's a long time since I read it all the way through, and I've learned so much more about the music and the history since. I'm really enjoying going back through and piecing some things together and connecting some threads I missed the first time, listening to a bunch of music that I hadn't heard before, revisiting some stuff. Really, really interesting. Just, digging through that one again. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, I would definitely check it out. But that leads me on to the final bit of this episode, which is a quick chat with Gabe Witcher about his app Gig Ledger Pro, built for working musicians to help them keep on track of their finances. Sounds like a great idea, but I'm not going to tell you any more about it. I will let Gabe explain it to you. Hi Gabe, good to see you again.
Hey, you too.
You've been developing an app for musicians called Gig Ledger Pro. I'd love to hear a bit about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, it came about because I couldn't find a solution that was already out there that was what I needed. Everything was either kind of geared towards retail accounting software, or just overbloated or really underdeveloped. And I found myself really wanting a set of specific things that could cut out, all the stuff that I didn't need to use and just give me the information that I really needed, which was how much money do I have coming on the horizon in the future? How much money is owed to me for gigs I've already done? And how can I make invoicing as easy and simple as possible? And that's basically all I needed. And surprisingly, nothing really got it done in an efficient way.
It's often the way with these kinds of things. Somebody fixes their own problem and it turns out that's everybody else's problem too.
Yeah. Yeah. The more I started talking to friends and colleagues, asking them, hey, what do you use to keep track of your stuff and make sure that, you've gotten paid for the work you've done and stuff. And everyone had a different hodgepodge, method of doing it. And every time I mentioned, hey, would you use something like this? Everyone was like, yes, absolutely. So it went from being just kind of a small thing that I was just going to use for myself to thinking about how can I actually build this so it'll be useful to people.
Well, being a musician is usually a kind of multi-strand career anyway, because most people teach, they'll gig, they'll record, and there's just different things come in as like if you're on tour, there'll be per diems and things like that, and so it's quite a specific set of things, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and nothing, even something as simple as just categorizing the jobs properly is, on something like FreshBooks or Quicken is, more complicated than it needs to be. And so I just wanted to give musicians a set of things that we know we're gonna use to make it easy. You can set up a project in there and categorize it by, okay, this is a recording date. This is for a TV show. This is a concert. This is an arrangement I'm doing. And then once you make the project, you can add the specifics, okay? And everything becomes a line item that then, if you have to invoice, because we often, sometimes you have to invoice, sometimes you don't. And I also know that for me, just the idea of sitting down and setting up an invoice, putting all the information in there was often a barrier to actually getting it done and getting paid. And I thought, that's just my laziness and, not wanting to do it. And everyone I talked to was like, oh, it's the worst. So I wanted to make it as easy and seamless as possible. It's 2 clicks, 2 presses of a button. If you've spent, a couple of minutes putting all the information for the gig in there. And it's super easy.
And then presumably at the end you have a really neat list of all your income, where it's come from, and probably who's the quickest payer, right?
Yeah. That's that. As I started to get deeper into this thing, I realized, I can actually, calculate a bunch of different things, like how long it takes certain clients to pay, and how far in advance they usually ask to book, and you can start to see larger patterns if you've entered all your stuff in there. Another thing that I realized could be super useful is it will calculate your estimated taxes per quarter, which a lot of musicians, I know, and I'm very guilty of this. That's the last thing I want to think of. And then when it comes time, I got to, okay, where's all this coming from? And some people pay cash, and some people, pay through a corporation, and some people pay, all these different methods from dozens of different places, and trying to, okay, some of it's, not already been taxed, and what's, how complicated it gets. And so with this, you just enter it. There's a whole section of analytics that'll tell you what you've made that you need to pay taxes on. And so you can keep track of that stuff.
And it saves you that mad panic when it comes to deadline day of going through everything in one go, because you've been incrementally doing it as you went along. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's all right there. And you can export a report to see it all in one place. And I actually spent some time doing it for different countries. So, in America, we have 1099s and W-2s, but the UK has a different system, and Canada has a different system, and French Canada has a different system. And Australia has a different system. So basically all the English speaking countries plus French Canadian, I have it. So you can select the region that you're in, and it'll automatically update what kind of forms that you need to worry about, the dates of when the estimations are due, and how many periods per year, and all that kind of stuff.
It's amazing, isn't it? When you find a thing that you need and you create it, it seems ridiculous that somebody hasn't thought this before, but it sounds like such a simple, efficient system for these things. Because like you say, if most things that do these kind of jobs either don't quite do the right thing or do so many other things that you don't need. Yeah. And, I remember trying to do QuickBooks, and the terminology, it's, something just as simple as the terminology is just different enough to where I have to take time now to learn, okay, wait, what does this mean? And what does this mean? And then figure out how to kind of do accounting
in a real way, which is not something that I want to spend time doing. I just let me know, how much do I have coming in? I can see the total right there. Tell me what I'm owed, and that way I can kind of get a sense of where I'm at financially at the moment. Because I'm sure I'm not the only freelancer out there who, wakes up every day and goes, okay, how am I going to make this all work? And just being able to see those totals specifically really helps calm the nerves and either let you know, okay, I'm doing okay for, this many months ahead, or I need to actually hustle some more right now and make some stuff happen.
And I guess if you see an accumulated pile of invoices that haven't been paid yet, it gives you a bit of an incentive to spend an hour or two on admin and chasing people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, gosh, so much of my life is chasing down money. And so it's all right there. And also, it's not irregular for me to do a gig and go and know that I'll get paid in a week or so and then completely forget I've done it. If somebody sends me a track to record on and it's, in the middle of 4 or 5 other remote recording sessions that I'm doing that day, and it's a quick song. It takes me 30 minutes. I do it and I send it out and I'm on to the next thing, and I can easily in a week forget that I even did it. So to have it right there and go, oh, right, I need to get paid for that. Super helpful.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly useful. Great idea.
Thank you.
Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas.